anyways, this is about 5 minutes worth. Just a little kind of start us off on a little bit of a lighter note, and then we'll get into our lesson. I'm not seeing anything. All right, well, maybe a little shift. This is our has been our theme verse when we started this whole thing, Galatians 4:4. But when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth His Son, made of a woman, made under the law. And there we go. So our operating thesis has been, if we believe in the absolute sovereignty of God, God is sovereign in all aspects of life, and He has not created the world and then just sat back on a lawn chair watching to see what's going to happen. He's intimately involved in human history, and our thesis is that Jesus came to the earth at the exact time that God had ordained. All previous human history was guided by God, with each of the successive Gentile kingdoms prophesied in Daniel playing its own role in preparing the world for Christ's arrival on the earth and the establishment of His church. Jesus Christ arrived at exactly the time that God intended for Him to arrive, and that time leading up to that was all preparation, getting the world ready for the advent of Christ. Now, do you remember each of these empires serves a particular purpose? Do you remember what Babylon's purpose was with regard to the Jewish nation? It was punishment. Israel was punished for her failure to turn away from the worship of false gods and idols, and the Lord sent prophets. They abused the prophets. They refused to turn from their ways, so the Lord sent them off into exile. Hey, Mike, I need to bring up my presenter's view. Do you know how to do that? I've got some side notes here. I'm not sure where. I'm gonna have to maybe go back and start over again. Yeah, I see it. I got use presenter view, but then this will work right here. I can work with this. All right. So Babylon, Israel. Well, I don't want to see that either, do I? Well, okay. We'll have to work with it. Persia, their role was preservation of the nation of Israel. You know that Esther, Nehemiah, and Ezra occur during the time that Israel is in under Persian domination. If you recall that the story of Esther, Haman plots to destroy Israel, and God has arranged circumstances to put Esther in a position where she has the king's ear, and she is able, through her influence, to preserve and save the Jewish people. And her uncle Mordecai is elevated to a position where he is a prime minister, a high-functioning official within the Persian government. And during this period, you see a number of Jewish exiles who are in influential positions of the Persian government, Daniel being one, his friends. We see Ezra and Nehemiah. They're in high positions. They're able to influence things for the betterment of their people. And it was under Cyrus the Great that the Jewish people were emancipated. They were allowed to return to their land, to rebuild the city, to rebuild the temple. And so then under Greece, we have preservation or preparation of the culture. The culture is being prepared for the arrival of Christ. And so by the time that Christ arrives, Greek has become the primary language of the area. Everybody speaks Greek. The Old Testament has been translated into Greek, the Septuagint. That's already on the scene. Even Greek philosophy, even though Greek philosophy is pagan in origin, the Greek philosophy gets people thinking about esoteric sorts of things. They start thinking about, one of the things they talked about is the first mover. Their concept of God, the great being who started everything. They start thinking along these lines, and the Greek language is, because of the philosophical influence of Greece, the Greek language is, I think, and this has been a question I've always had, is why did the Lord allow for Greek to be the language in which the New Testament would be given to us? The Greek language gives, it has words that describe the various concepts in the New Testament, such as redemption, propitiation, things like this. The Greek language is better suited, I think, for explaining these concepts of grace. Now, in Rome has power. That power first is the power to put Jesus on trial. Jesus told Pilate, "You have no power over me except for what the Lord has, or what God has given to you above." God gives Rome the power to put Jesus on trial. They also has the power to put to execute Christ, and then they would have power to persecute the church. So now, where are we going to go forward from this? I tried to lay out my map. I don't know if I'm going to get to the end of it, but we didn't get a lot of time last week to really focus on, or last time to get into the Roman Empire, but I want to do that starting today. So we're going to look at Rome's role in preparing the way for Christ's arrival. I also want to look at John the Baptist's role in preparing the way for Christ's arrival as well. Now, I tried to rack my brain for the last time I heard a really good sermon on John the Baptist, and I couldn't remember any. I know that he has been the subject of some sermons, but I just don't remember very many of them. And my first inclination was just sort of touch on John the Baptist, move on. But when I saw the passage there where Christ said, among those born of women, there's none greater than John the Baptist. If Christ says that, then he's worthy of a real in-depth study. Who is John the Baptist? What was his role as Christ's forerunner? How did he prepare Israel for the arrival of Christ? And so I'm going to spend a good amount of time on him. Also, then we come to Christ announces his church. I think it was in Matthew 6, where he says, where he asks his disciples, "Who do men say that I am?" And Peter says, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." Christ says, "Upon this rock I will build my church." We're going to look at that, and then it's not my intention to replow where Pastor has already gone, but I do think it's going to be necessary to come back and touch on some issues of doctrine, because as we get later into this, we're going to see how the church begins to stray away from apostolic doctrine, so we're going to have to go back again and review what apostolic doctrine was. But Christ first begins to teach on kingdom principles and the church. You'll see many things in his teachings that are directly applicable to the church, such as, what do you do if you got a beef against your brother? He explains it. He teaches on divorce. Should divorce really exist in a church? I think not. Christ has many things to say about this. So we're going to look at some of his teachings on kingdom principles, a sort of a survey of the Gospels and those things that he teaches. Then I want to look in depth at his trial, crucifixion, and resurrection at the hands of the Romans and sinners. Without the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, there is no church. That had to happen. It was according to God's purpose. And I want to look at that and just see what we can learn from that. And the disciples' commission, as Christ ascends to heaven, he gives the disciples his commission. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel, teaching and baptizing in my name. We want to look at that. Then the advance of the church. We're going to do a survey of Acts, looking at Paul's conversion, the early church, the early converts, Peter's sermons, Paul's missionary trips as he plants churches all around the Roman Empire. We're going to constantly be coming back to how the Greek culture prepared for Paul's ministry as he went to the Gentile nations and began preaching the gospel. People were ready, not all, not even most, but many people were ready for the gospel because of the period of preparation that the Lord had prepared. We'll look at his conversion and then his missionary journeys. We'll look at Peter and the others in the church. Then, again, like I said, I'm going to come back and look at apostolic doctrine of the church, a survey of the epistles. What is the doctrine that the apostles laid down for us? And this will be important because then we're going to look at early heresies that begin to infect the church. Many of these heresies are addressed in the epistles, such as Gnosticism. That plays a prominent role. I believe it's in Galatians. And we're going to look at some of these heresies, and then we're going to go outside of Scripture. There are extant materials available from that time that tell us things that were infecting the church and begin to intrude on the church, and it's caused the church to go off the rails as far as its doctrine. There were 10 great persecutions under the Romans. We'll look at that. And some of these persecutions were empire-wide. Some of them were regional, local persecutions. But we'll look at that too as far as persecution, how it helped really to advance the church. The more the church has been persecuted throughout history, the stronger the church actually has become and the more it has spread. We'll go again and look at Christ's messages to the churches of Revelation. Revelation 3, we'll look at that. And then I want to do a little bit of a study on each of the apostles of Christ, what we know from Scripture, what church tradition says, knowing that they are just tradition, but they give us some idea of where some of these apostles went as they obeyed the Great Commission to go out into all the world and preach the gospel. We have extra biblical evidence as to where many of these apostles went to preach. We're going to look into that. And then the apostolic fathers. Now, the apostles of Christ, they are the first generation leaders of the church. And from that, we come to the apostolic fathers. The apostolic fathers, they are the disciples of the apostles. The most prominent of which was John. John lived the longest. He, by all accounts, lived a full life and died a natural death, the only apostle to do so. And many of the apostolic fathers that go on to lead the church after he passes away were tutored and mentored by John directly. So we'll look at some of that. So far, the first and second generation, the church is still fairly doctrinal, fairly fundamental. And then from there we go into the third generation called the church fathers. And that's where the church begins to go off the rails. You have men that come in, Augustine. You know, Augustine he's worth reading, but he does have some things that he was wrong on. And others like him come in and they begin to write and begin to expound on doctrine, and they take the church off into a wrong direction, and they prepare the church really for the advent of the Roman Catholic Church in the long run. And then the church slips into apostasy. And we'll probably, I don't know if we're going to get all the way over to hit this or not, but this is my plan. And wherever we break off, then we'll pick up again next year, Lord willing, if we're still all here. So, the Roman Empire. I'm going to have to go back again here because I need some of my notes, I think. So, let's go there. Can you guys see that well enough? Or do I need to expand it some? Well, I keep clicking on this presenter view, and it's telling me that yeah. Well, that's good. All right, good. I can work with that. That's good. Yeah. Right. I got them at the bottom, but you guys are going to see them too. Now, let's see. This is mine. All right. Daniel 2. You remember when Nebuchadnezzar had his dream, and Daniel comes in and interprets the dream. We are at the Roman Empire now. Of that great image that Nebuchadnezzar saw, we saw the head of gold representing Babylonia. We saw the chest and arms of silver, which represented Persia. The thigh and stomach of brass represented the Greeks under Alexander, and then the two legs of iron represent the Roman Empire. The legs prophetically represent the eventual division of the Roman Empire into two parts. There was the Western Empire centered in Rome, the Eastern Empire centered in Byzantium, also known as Constantinople, named after Constantine, the first emperor to issue his Edict of Toleration, allowing for the Christian church to coexist, and then he issued another edict making Christianity the official religion of the empire, which really was the downfall of the church. When the church had imperial approval, it really was a downfall. Constantine began to insert himself into the operation of the church, and the Bishop of Rome, because he's close to the seat of power, begins to adopt trappings of the empire, and it really leads to the downfall of the church. So, the two legs prophetically represent the future dividing of the Roman Empire into two halves. In order to improve administrative efficiency, by this time the Roman Empire really covers all of the Mediterranean basin, all of North Africa, all the way out to probably central to modern-day Turkey, up around the Black Sea, up to the Danube in Germany, almost all of France, and really into Britain too, halfway up. You know historically about Hadrian's Wall He built that wall across all of England to keep the barbarians out. So it became difficult for one emperor to administer this huge empire, so they thought it would be best to divide it in two and have one emperor in Rome administering the western half and one in Constantinople administering the eastern half. So the Roman Empire was divided in 395 AD. We're in the 4th century of the church. And in one form or another, the Roman Empire would last for 1,500 years. It is the longest lasting of all of the Gentile empires. It is for good reason that iron is chosen as the symbol of the Roman Empire. As we've discussed before, like with Babylon, Babylon fell in one night because, according to Herodotus, the Greek historian, Cyrus diverted the Euphrates River, allowing the soldiers to go in under the wall on the dry riverbed into the city. Daniel had prophesied to Belshazzar he was going to die that night, and that happened. And in one night, Babylon fell. When Alexander the Great decided to take on the Persian Empire, he defeated the Persians in only 4 battles: Granicus River, Issus, the siege of Tyre, and then Gaugamela. And then that was the end of the Persian Empire. It was Alexander the Great's. And when he died, it splits up into 4 separate empires. Now, the Romans, as you look into Roman history, I did a search once, and it was basically all the battles that Rome has lost. And there was just page after page after page after page of battles where entire legions were wiped out. The amazing strength of Rome is that she is able to lose all these battles and still maintain her strength. And contemporary historians describe Rome as being like a great hydra. You cut off one head and 3 come back in its place. You destroy one legion and 4 are going to come in to finish you off. So Rome had this innate strength that allows it to endure for, this 1,500 years really pertains to the empire period. Before that, there was a republic in Rome, and historians believe that Rome actually was founded somewhere in the 600 BC. So really, you're talking about a group of people who survived for 2,000 years. It was 1453 when the Turks invaded from Turkey, I don't know what they called Turkey at the time. They came in and they conquered Constantinople, and that was the end of the Eastern Empire. So the Western Empire fell in 476 to the barbarians from the north, the Germans mostly, and then the Eastern Empire fell in 1453. Yeah, just about. So in one form or another, the empire lasts for this period of time. Babylon lasted, I don't remember the exact number, 70 years perhaps. Persia lasted close to 200. In one form or another, the Greek Empire lasted 250 to 300 years. But Rome lasts for almost 2,000 years from the time the city was founded. So this is the Roman Empire. The orange over here is the Western, which is governed from Rome, and then Constantinople is right here, and it governs the eastern part of the empire. So that is the extent of the Roman Empire at the time that Christ appears on earth. And then in Daniel 7:7 we read about the ferocious beast with teeth of iron, representing the great and enduring strength of the Roman Empire. And no one is able to stand before it. It conquers, and even when it loses, it still conquers. So now I want to look at the Roman Empire at the time of Jesus. I decided I wanted to do a little survey of the New Testament. I went through and I tried to think of all the words that were Roman, had Roman meaning. I want to see how many times these words appeared in the New Testament. So the word Rome appears in the New Testament 5 times, Romans 7, Rome 15, Centurion 21, Centurions 3, Italian, Italy 1 and 4, Legion is there 3 times. Well, all right. Legions 1, Caesar 21, Caesars 9, Caesarea, which are cities that are named after Caesar. They appear 17 times, and then Pilate's in there 56 times. So the Rome has a significant role to play in the New Testament and is referred to often. So reasons that Rome prepared the world for the coming of Christ. First was the hegemony of the empire. There was worldwide unification for the most part. Rome continued with the policy of previous empires where when they took over a land, as long as you paid your taxes and you maintained the peace, you were allowed a certain amount of autonomy. But they also, what they did that the others didn't, they put forth the promise of Roman citizenship as a reward for faithful service to the empire. And this was highly valued. And we saw this when we talk about Paul, when they were going to whip him, and he said, "Is it lawful for you to whip a man who is a Roman?" And that centurion was quaking in his boots because he realized he had just about done a really bad thing. And so being a Roman citizen was highly valued. Also, Christ comes to earth at the time called the Pax Romana. This is called the Peace of Rome. It is a period of about 200. Some people even say it's 300 years of relative peace within the empire. Octavian became Caesar Augustus, and Octavian was the one who his philosophy was, under his rule, Roman conquest sort of came to an end, and his objective was to consolidate the conquest that Rome had already accomplished. He was interested in improving Roman economy, improving peace and security in the empire, and with the exception of a few skirmishes at the outer fringes of the empire, there was relative peace throughout the Roman period. At the time of Christ, Rome also had excellent roads and seafaring routes. And if you look here, this is one of the Roman roads that still survives today, and there are many. And this was basically a design how the roads were designed back then. It looks very familiar to what I see when I drive I-75 and they're building the road. That's the same sort of a design they use. But the Roman roads allowed for Paul and the apostles to travel quickly to the various corners of the empire, taking the gospel with them. But not only that, these roads were secure. And then here's the sea routes that were available as well. There was empire-wide security. There would have been Roman legions and Roman garrisons established throughout the empire along the road, so that the highway robbers and the brigands, if they were captured, they could look forward to nothing but crucifixion. It was a terrible death. Jerusalem came under Roman influence in 63 BC under Pompey. Pompey was responsible also for ridding the eastern Mediterranean of piracy. He engaged in a campaign to make the sea routes safe. So when Christ comes, both by sea and by land, there's great security in the empire, so that a person can travel quickly by their standards, from one place to another, taking the gospel with them. As I said, there was the hope of the privilege of Roman citizenship. Rome held this out as a reward for faithful service, and it gave a lot of privileges to a Roman citizen. A Roman citizen could marry another Roman citizen. I did not realize this, but a non-Roman citizen could not marry a Roman citizen. That was prohibited. A Roman citizen was allowed to vote. A Roman citizen could carry his citizenship wherever he wanted to in the empire and maintain status. Roman citizens were also exempted from crucifixion. They could not be put to death by crucifixion. Thus, when Paul is put to death, he's beheaded. He's not crucified because he is a Roman citizen. So Roman citizenship had great privileges, and it was highly prized. And you remember when Paul tells the centurion, "I am a Roman citizen," the Roman centurion says, "How did you come by this? Because I paid a great price for mine." And Rome said, "I was freeborn as a Roman citizen." Like I said, the endurance of Greek culture and language throughout the empire. On the process of its conquest, Rome absorbed and adapted Greek culture to its own. In fact, many of the pantheon of Greek gods were moved over into Rome, given different names, but they're the same basic gods. I can't think of them all. Jupiter, it becomes Juno. Mercury is Hermes, and so they just changed the names. It's basically the same religion. Perfection of public crucifixion to control the populace. Rome did not invent crucifixion. It was already in existence, but they perfected it to a science to maximize the suffering that a person would endure, and it was very effective in controlling the population. Now, we have two famous crucifixions. The first is Christ himself, but the second famous crucifixion was the crucifixion of the army that was following Spartacus in the Second Servile War. They were defeated eventually, and the punishment was that every mile from along the Appian Way, one of the conquered soldiers was, they were not every mile, but they were crucified all the way along the route leading into Rome. And I did my calculations on it by yardage and whatnot, and it looks to me like there would have been a crucified person along the road about every 100, 150 yards. So this is the second famous crucifixion. It was designed to maximize suffering, to prolong death, and it was designed to scare everyone into observance of Roman law and Roman regulation. Also, there was general dissatisfaction with the pagan religions of the day. Now, because Rome had taken in so many different cultures within its empire, a lot of these religions are coming in. Greek philosophies come in, and there's a general dissatisfaction with religion at the time. And we'll go down to, let's see. This little quote here came from our own Bible encyclopedia on the back by E.M. Blaylock. He said, "The Christian faith came to a world hungry and insecure and unsatisfied, to a morally disintegrating society, and to utter religious confusion." So Christ comes on the scene at this time, and he brings the truth of the gospel. Now, like I said, most, probably very few people actually would turn to the Christian faith, but it needed a place to start. When the Allies stormed the beaches of Normandy, they didn't go straight for Berlin. They knew they couldn't do that. They first had to gain a foothold, a toehold, secure their position, and then move out from there. And you see really the same sort of thing happening with the Christian faith. You know, sort of the Christian faith gains a toehold throughout the empire. And Paul even tells us, even with the house of Caesar, there were those who were believed to have been Christians. So, are there any questions? I think I heard the second bell. Any questions or comments? Any objections to our tribute to those who fall asleep in church? All right. So, thank you very much. We will pick up here again next week.